now. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show. Dave Emmons here. That's me. And A Strange Reality. I talk about all different kinds of subjects, and we have experts, we have scientists, archaeologists that come on the show, biblical scholars, and today, my guest today is a little bit of, I guess he's got a background, and he's a doctor, he's a scientist, he's a law school person. He's got a JD from New York Law School. So he's a lawyer doctor combination. So that's a deadly combination, really, in a way. It's a double whammy in smarts, to tell you the truth. And I want to say his name. I didn't ask him pre-show, but Dr. Bruce, if I mess up on this, let me know. It's Rapuano. Is that it?
Rapuano. The U is long.
Okay, Rapuano.
Rapuano.
Okay. I
Very
should have
good.
got
Very
that.
good.
That's my mistake. I said Rapiano. I said it like what is a Bostoner or New Yorker would say it, real quick like. But no, he's my guest today, Dr. Bruce Rapiano, and he will be with us for an hour, something like that. And we're going to be talking about. He's a scientist, a doctor, and a lawyer, and he's been abducted, and he knows about ETs and UFOs. So this should be really exciting. Well, Dr. Rapuano, a BA degree from the University of Pennsylvania, where he majored in neurobiology and minored in psychology, a PhD in neuropharmacology from the University of Connecticut, and a JD from New York Law School. Dr. Rapuano has conducted independent biomedical research as a cell biologist at internationally recognized medical institutions, including the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center and the Hospital for Special Surgery, both located in New York City. He has authored or co-authored 30 scientific articles in peer-reviewed medical journals. He has published articles on topics such as the role of the membrane of the phospholipids in nerve function and skeletal effects of cancer metastasizing is metastasis. Okay, metabolic bone diseases. A lot of medical terminology. I'm not used to that, doctor. I'm sure you're probably sitting back there. Yeah, I know he's going to stumble on that one. Yeah, but
You're doing fine.
metabolic bone diseases and the coordinate surface electrical and biological properties of titanium alloy implant materials. And that's interesting. Dr. Rapuano has also worked concurrently as a medical research scientist and associate radiation safety officer at the Hospital for Special Surgery. And Dr. Rapuano, would you like to add to that bio, maybe clear up a couple of those medical terminologies that I stumbled on?
I think you did fine, Dave. I think you covered it all.
Okay, that's good. And well, what's going on with you now, Dr. Bruce?
Well, now I'm kind of at the end of my career, and I, decided to describe some of these experiences I've had with UFO close encounters and alien abductions, because I think it's important to tell my story, because I noticed, I want to say very few, but I'm going to say no scientist, at least mainstream American scientists, who have had experiences with alien abduction, have reported those in detail in the form of writing a book. And I thought that I might be able to, in telling my story, to contribute to the momentum behind disclosure, and to maybe allow some other people with scientific backgrounds, engineers, doctors, uh,
Yeah,
scientists, biologists, etc., who
yeah,
I know have had the same experience, Dave,
yeah.
to
You
come
froze up
forward
a little
and
bit.
tell their stories. Big investments.
Yeah, you
Can you
froze
hear me
up a
now?
little bit, Doc. Yeah, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
But
froze up a
I'm
little
trying.
bit. You,
My goal is just to have the study of this phenomenon, the scientific study, legitimized by the fact that people like myself are reporting that they've had these experiences. So
right.
that's my goal in writing the book.
And I'm glad you did. And you're a professional, you're a doctor, a lawyer, and you've got biological experience and titanium alloy implant materials. I believe I have one of those. I've had a couple of those. We talked before we went on air, and I was excited in talking to you because, yeah, you are one of the very few doctors, medical doctors, and neuroscientists, and lawyers, a combination of both that's had ET related experiences. And you're right. It's good that we come on and talk about it.
Can I interject? Interject that.
Yeah,
Excuse me for interrupting,
there. Yeah,
but
you're being.
don't agree with scientific background. They've many people of my background have had these experiences. I'm convinced. They just haven't told anyone.
Yeah, right. They're yeah, they're checking the minds of our specialists and our doctors and scientists. You're like you said, 50% of the people don't even really know they've been abducted. And you froze up a few times, Dr. Bruce. I don't know if you
True.
know that. Yeah, uh, we might be having some Wi-Fi problems, or
How am I now? How am I doing now?
you're okay now, but you froze up a
Okay.
few times. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
As long as you can still hear me.
Okay. I hear you. I got you.
Okay. Great. Great. Um, yeah. I mean, my point is, I'm agreeing with you to the extent that very few people with my background will even talk about this to their peers, their colleagues, their family. As far as I know, I'm the only one that's actually written a book describing their UFO close encounter and alien abduction experiences in detail. So
Mhm.
I think that's unique about my particular experience and story.
Right. Do you
And I'm
know?
hoping I encourage other people to come forward and do the same.
Yeah. Do you know other scientists, doctors, lawyers that you know of? They're not coming forward. Is that how you have firsthand experience at this?
Well, from what I've read in the literature, in terms of um, the most recognized UFO abduction investigators have discussed in the books they've published that many of the abductees that come to them and discuss the experiences they've had that they can consciously recall, or experiences that, with the help of the investigator, they're retrieving through regressive hypnosis. Many of those individuals, according to the investigators, have a technical background,
Right.
engineers, doctors, and scientists, and so forth. I, I have to say that since I've written the book, I've been contacted by people of that background that I'm sure never told anyone, but
Yeah.
after reading my book,
Yeah. You're freezing up, and we're losing your audio. I was just going to say, Dr. Bruce was on the George Knapp show, Coast to Coast, and he discussed this book,
for at least okay.
Dominion Lost book. Yeah, your audio was cutting out, and you're freezing up. Yeah, and I was just telling the audience your book and things of that nature. Okay,
Hi, Dave.
okay, you're back. Okay,
And so what let's see, what were we talking about? Again, I don't
you're
want to mention the
yeah,
individuals who are
no,
highly placed scientists in, well, some very important agencies in the US that have come forward to contact me, and just with the idea of maybe by talking to me they would better understand their own experience.
right. I was just telling the people
I,
while we couldn't hear you and you're being broken up. I said that you were on the George Knapp Coast to Coast AM
Mhm.
show, and you were talking about your book Dominion Lost, and you have a long version and a short version. You can explain that to us. Now that takes us to your story in this book, Dominion Lost. I want people to buy this book because you have a professional here and a scientist, a doctor, and a lawyer. But lawyer, I don't know about, but they do check, I guess, everybody's brain, and I guess they want to know. You have so much knowledge. you have several careers going on with you, and I guess that's why they were interested in you. They wanted to find out your background, how you learned this stuff, what do you know, and so could you explain to us the very beginnings, Dr. Bruce, how you got started in this writing this book?
Well, I've had these experiences my entire life, and what happened is near the beginning of my career as a scientist, um, there were a number of books that came out by UFO alien abduction investigators that were describing things that the abductees were reporting to them that happened in the same precise way to me. And I began to realize that these experiences I had had my childhood and early teen years that I couldn't explain now fit the core alien abduction scenario to a T. I could check every box in that core alien abduction um, scenario. And I realized that I was one of them. I had to conclude that the best model for explaining what had happened to me was the alien abduction model. And now, at that point, I was really afraid to tell anyone.
Mm-hmm.
This was in the mid to late 80s. Whitley Strieber had come out with his book Communion, and I didn't know how I really can communicate to anyone what form I could use to describe what happened to me. So I kind of kept silent about it. Didn't even tell my family what my conclusions were about my experiences, my very strange, what I call transcendent experiences. But now we're in the middle of the disclosure movement, and I thought it was something I should do to kind of contribute to that. I want to be a part of it,
Right.
and that's what.
There's always a beginning, Dr. Bruce. What was your beginning as a child or a young person when you had your first encounter that lets you know that things were happening around you, Dr. Bruce?
The earliest is a very unusual memory that I have of walking up the stairs to our apartment, and just as my mother picked me up at the last step because I couldn't walk any longer. I was 2.5 to 3 years old at the latest. I had this sense memory of being with these 3.5 to 4 foot tall um, humanoid beings that were white in color, had disproportionately large hairless heads, and there were two of them. One was holding my left hand, one was holding my right hand. And in that flash, in that instant of sense memory being evoked by my mother picking me up, I recalled that these were my mentors. I had some type of relationship with these beings. I didn't understand the nature of it, other than I seemed to understand that they were my teachers, and in every way they were more advanced than my parents, than any other humans I knew at that very young age. That was my first experience, and subsequent to that, I um, had another experience where I was uh, probably at the age of 6 years old. It was in the summertime. I was just sleeping in bed and was about to nod off, and I saw the strangest looking airplane through my bedroom window. It was just before dusk and probably late June or maybe late July, and it was an airplane that had a highly reflective surface and a fuselage that was too large. It was too circular or large relative to its length to be a normal airplane. I thought it had wings, but again, after studying the UFO alien abduction phenomenon, I think of this as a screen memory. It probably was a UFO.
Yeah.
And it was flying over the rooftops of the houses in our neighborhood. Instead of watching this strange looking craft that I should have been fascinated to watch as long as I could see it, I did something very strange. It's almost like I was told by someone or some intelligence to turn my head away from it and go to sleep. Very uncharacteristic because I was a very curious child from the earliest age. When I woke up, I wasn't in my room anymore. And I woke up not in my bed, but on some type of examination table. It was much larger than an exam table that would be necessary to accommodate a 6-year-old child. And I thought I was in some type of hospital. And there was some commotion in front of me, and I to find out what it was, I sat up, and in front of me, maybe 20 feet from the the foot of the table, the exam table, I could see dozens of these beings that I just described to you that I knew from at the age of 2 or 3 years old. And there were dozens walking in one direction, dozens walking in another. And I thought they were the strangest looking doctors because I thought I was in a hospital, some type of clinical environment. But I thought they were the strangest looking doctors I'd ever seen. And at that point, I'm going to cut that little anecdote short, and because it's explained in great detail in my book, and I think I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Now, you apparently they started with you younger. They didn't. I thought maybe they took to your academic skills, like in medicine and legal work, and maybe they were trying to track your mind and see what all that knowledge is and how you got it. But you started young, so they were following you all your life. Now, what were other incidents or experiences you had after being a younger child? Did they follow you along, Dr. Bruce?
Yes, I mean I can remember, you know, I remember a number of dreams in my early teens, uh, late teens, early 20s, where I'm flying. I mean, and it seems so real. And strangely enough, who's accompanying me? The same beings. One is on one side of me, one is on another. And I've had other experiences where I would wake up and be and feel that I can't move. And lo and behold, what do I see in the room next to me? A gray. Same anatomical appearance, same height. I woke up one time and I could see a gray alien. It was either had been um, just had materialized into the room, had his head, excuse me, his hands near my head or behind my head, was performing some type of operation or procedure on me, but I couldn't move. All I could do was look at this being,
Mhm.
and who was crouching very close to me as I lay in bed. And so I've had these experiences of encounters with the same type of small 3.5 to 4 foot tall humanoid being that I believe were doing some type of experimentation on me,
Mhm.
which I
Yeah.
really didn't understand.
Yeah, those are the
Um,
worker bees. They could be
yes.
robotic, biomechanical. We don't know for sure. I've heard words that they're really light when you touch them. Like Travis Walton said, he pushed them and they were
Mhm.
very light, like air, and they just pushed aside. But yeah, I saw a little gray myself, and you're saying they had the same big eyes like everybody sees and a little nose. Is that right? Is that what you're saying, Dr.
I,
Bruce?
I, was not able to see those facial features so clearly,
Hmm.
but I was able to see beings with the same general anatomical appearance as the grays. And in the encounter I just mentioned a couple minutes ago, gray in color, but could make out the features.
Hmm.
But again, the large, disproportionately large head, hairless head, and clearly, I can't say that I saw anything other than that would resemble the reptilians, the mantis, the tall Nordics, or the Arcturians, any of the other species that many investigators have theorized are the master species for these. You call them, I think, drones, and
Right.
I have the same conclusion that I draw in the book, that they're kind of a slave or worker class that are under the control of some higher species. But I only saw the subservient species that I'm calling the grays, the subservient species.
Right. I've seen a couple of the species in my lucid dreams, tall whites,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and I've seen like a bluish look color alien. But
Osirians, yeah.
yeah, you mentioned that you couldn't see facial features. Well, in a lot of even lucid dreams or regressed dreams from hypnosis, you really can't see the faces of some of these people or some of these entities.
Mm-hmm.
That's happened to me. All I can see is their arm. I've seen little fine hairs on their arms, and I saw their face, and I saw one close up face of a tall white woman, She was face to face with me, but she's about 7 feet tall. But I've seen, just a few of their faces, like the gray, like you're talking about. But you're right; they do screen themselves even in your dreams. They erase your dreams and your memories, Doctor
Hmm.
Bruce. And you were talking, and here I'm reading here in your notes that you were abducted from a group of 8 other witnesses. Could you tell us that story, Doctor Bruce?
Yes, that is an incident where the experience began with a UFO close encounter.
Hmm.
Multiple witnesses, 8 other individuals. I liken it to the Travis Walton case, where
Right,
I'm categorizing this as an abduction experience where I was abducted that was witnessed by 8 other people. Now, 8 other people saw the UFO. We were playing a game of kickball, 10, 11-year-old children,
right.
and it was again in the summertime. I, I was the first to see a brilliant, huge light to my right. I had to walk past an oak tree closer to our house to get a better unobstructed view of it. And my gosh, it looked like it was right over our head. It was not a point source of light like an airplane or helicopter, star planet. It was at least 2.5 to 3 times the size of the full moon,
Hmm.
almost too bright to look at it. The configuration, I, I would liken it to the biblical Star of Bethlehem.
Wow.
And then everything eerily transitioned to that, what's commonly reported to be the Oz effect, where everything slows down, everything gets silent. You can no longer hear the ambient noises in the neighborhood or the animals and the insects that were you could hear them before, and now everything is silent. Everything starts to slow down. I see one or more of my classmates not speaking, frozen. They seem to be paralyzed, and I become very nervous about this.
Hmm.
And at this point, I begin to follow the object because the light turns off as if by a flip of a switch, and is replaced by the classic red or orange fireball, which begins now to move. Whereas the Star of Bethlehem light had been stationary, motionless, silent, it now begins to move in a southwest direction. No change in direction, altitude, or speed, and I follow it for about a minute and a half until it disappears over the horizon. And I come back and we all get together and start to talk about what we've seen. And what I gather is someone has noticed that during that encounter, that UFO close encounter, I had disappeared. I was no longer present at at the site where 8 or 9 people had huddled together to watch this UFO.
Hmm.
And so what began as a multiple witness UFO close encounter evolved into, again, another of my abductions. I can't really rule out whether any of the other people are abducted. I don't know that, but I know that, again, it was another in a series of experiences I had that I categorize as alien abduction.
Right. And you had these witnesses actually say that you disappeared. And how long were you gone? Do you know?
They don't know. They didn't tell me. Just asked me point blank, Bruce, where did you go? Now, we know from many, I would say dozens or hundreds of uh, uh, alien abduction accounts that many abductees report that if there are witnesses, they are somehow turned off, induced to fall asleep or
Right.
become paralyzed so as not to interfere with the abduction.
Right.
And when they come back, the witnesses are still there, their friends or family are still paralyzed, and it takes a while before things revert back to normal. And I think that very close, very um, I think is very closely similar to what I experienced during that particular encounter.
Right. And they do that also with when you're sleeping with your wife or your
Yes.
husband, they completely dumb them down, put them to sleep, and then they work on you. And that's happened to me several times. I call it dumb down. They
I
just
see.
they just dumb you down. you're like you had an anesthetic or whatever, and you're asleep, but you can watch, you can see with your eyes, but you can't do anything else. And
Mhm.
I don't know if your witnesses were able to even see anything. They must have some kind of control of time, Dr. Bruce. Do you think that they do?
I have that is a theory that's been discussed by many investigators. I haven't discussed that in my book. I focus on uh, the technology I think is that is being used in the implants that controls memory and consciousness and perception, and it can be used to erase memories and plant false or screen memories. But certainly, that's the theory you're talking about. The it's it's frightening to contemplate that the the aliens that we're uh, encountering are so advanced technologically that they can manipulate space and time. I haven't really discussed that in the book, and I don't have any evidence from my own experiences that would kind of support that particular theory. But
I've had
it's
a couple of I've had a couple of time jumps myself during my experiences, and that's why I was asking you. I heard that if
well,
you go on
missing
board,
time,
yeah,
missing time. Yeah,
missing time, yeah. I heard that you when you go on a ship and they take you to another dimension, that you can be gone for, you think, on that ship for several hours, but on Earth time you're only gone a few minutes. So the
yes.
time differential is quite a bit different, and we don't know anything about that, like you did, like you said, Doctor Bruce. Now, when you come back and they start asking you these questions, did you know what happened to you, or did you have enough memory, Dr. Bruce, in order to talk to him about it?
Talk to
You're
talk
with
to
the group of people you were with.
you know we really don't know what happened, and I've tried to talk to one person who was involved, my brother, and he was one of the witnesses. He doesn't recall very much. Now, I think if my memory was erased, I'm clearly um, not surprised at all that much of the memories of the witnesses is all similarly erased, so that they probably recall even less than I do.
Okay. You mentioned these implants. Do you think during those experiences, you mentioned something about having a nasal implant, a specific structure of all which were recalled without regressive hypnosis. Now, do you think you have an implant in you now, Dr. Bruce?
I, no, I can't really address that question because I can't rule it out. I
Mhm.
have not had any experiences that would attribute to having an implant in me in my brain or nasal cavity as an adult. But I
Mhm.
can't rule it out because, to be perfectly honest with you, Dave, I have not submitted to any neuroimaging for any medical reason that would tend to rule out or confirm the existence of an implant.
Right.
I just
Yeah. You were a neural doctor, so I guess you can explain probably what's going on with the implants and how they're manipulating our memories and everything. Dr. Bruce, would you have any professional opinion on what's going on there?
well, I think in terms of the alien agenda, I think that they're using the implants to catalog human mental activity, map the human brain. Um, Now, what's the overall aim of this? Is it to is it to somehow um, experiment on Homo sapiens for the purpose of our accelerated evolution to the next level,
Mhm.
so that we can uh, more easily interact with the community, the cosmic community of nations? In other words, is this being done for our own benefit? They're trying to study us so that they can they can be aware of which genes they need to manipulate or change in us so that we can evolve. Or are they trying to understand us so they can be in a position to influence the human mind and human affairs on this planet that they may have a stake in? They may have a vested interest in what goes on this planet.
Mhm.
Maybe even part of their agenda is to be able to control our species
Right.
because they have more of an interest in our planet and its resources than we
Right.
we may want to may even want to contemplate.
Right. You were
So,
talking about genetically re-engineered from our early hominin ancestors. I would imagine, I guess we hear about these stories about the Anunnaki, the ancient Sumerians, it's 260,000 years ago where they developed the modern, human. Uh, is that what you were getting to, that you think they're genetically manipulating us? And do you think that, I think also, my opinion is some of these implants are actually like, they look like brain neurons, the one that I had in my leg, and it looks like it would go and attach itself to your nerves and go to your brain and restructure your brain in a DNA sense. Is that possible, Dr. Bruce?
yeah, I have a different concept. I know uh, that's consistent with the work of late Dr. Roger Leir, who claims he took a lot of implants out of the actually mainly the legs of purported abductees, and he claims that there are certain tissues that had been adherent to the implant of neural origin. So that would kind of be consistent with the theory you're talking about. I tend to think of these implants that are found in other parts of the body as being reference type of implants, where they might act to kind of negate all the electromagnetic noise, act as something that would be used to control for all the ambient electromagnetic noise, which might interfere with what the implants in the brain are trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
which is, set measure brain signals and with the purpose of trying to understand uh, human mental activity. And you know, I think that the implants that are in other parts of the body may be part of that function, but they may not be involved in trying to um, have any effect. An implant in a leg is unlikely to have any effect on the physiology of the brain or the long-term uh, uh, genome of the cells in the brain. But I do think that genetic reengineering is part of the alien agenda in terms of the experiments that have been done on Homo sapiens by the ETs or the aliens. What I talk about in the book in terms of genetic reengineering of one of our early hominin ancestors, that was kind of inspired by Day After Roswell, Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso's book, where
Right.
he talked about all of the um, autopsy reports that he read that was done by the pathologists at Walter Reed Hospital on the Roswell aliens,
Right.
and claiming that they had no digestive system, no reproductive system, that they obtained their nutrition through the skin. And so, what I theorized, and I had a lot of uh, um, studies in peer-reviewed journals to support some of my theories, relates to the fact that I think that the Greys were genetically engineered from one of our hominin ancestors, and I speculate that it's probably Homo habilis, who happened to be, I think Homo habilis lived 2 or 3 million years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and happened to be 3.5 to 4 feet tall. So that's one of the candidate hominin species that I discuss as being maybe the ancestor to the Greys, and I discuss in the afterword of the longer version of my book, the unabridged version, exactly what genes were manipulated, what genes were altered, what genes were knocked out in the hominin species to create the Greys. How it specifically in detail, uh, the the Greys could have been genetically re-engineered from one of our ancestors, one of our human ancestors.
Mm-hmm. Do you
So
think
that's
that this process was done directly in the ET's lab where they genetically DNA manipulated our genes, or was it the implants all along, slowly but surely doing it with implants? Uh, I know Daryl Sims. He's an implant
Mhm.
specialist, and I believe I told him I give him some pictures of a couple of my implants, but I I don't. A lot of people think, well, they're tracking you with these implants. No, they can track you from your own frequency. We each have our own frequency, and they can track us down. I mean, I was tracked down from Illinois to Alaska. They knew I was in Alaska,
Mhm.
so they track you from your frequency, not particularly by the implants. The implants are like you're saying, there's some kind of a neural implants in which they're restructuring your mind. You think there's a switch that one day that they can turn that switch on and we can be turned on like a, I guess what they call that, a, a Manchurian candidate where they can just turn us and flip us and change us into their type of hybrid alien?
At least in terms of effects on the brain, you know, it's even more than that. It's even worse than that. You've everybody's seen the movie The Matrix. I think the implant has the capability to simulate a complete reality by its effect. I mean, this is my theory that the aliens' technology in the form of this implant is so advanced that, as I said before, not only can it play the human mind like a piano, but create a completely independent reality if that was what their intention is. And that means that you know it's very difficult to be able to trust any of our perceptions if such a technology exists, and as I theorize it exists and has been used for this purpose by some advanced non-human intelligence. It's 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 frightening in one way. It's exciting to a scientist because of course, if it's used for the good of the species, it has a lot. It holds a lot of promise and benefit, and it brings up the work of Elon Musk in his company Neuralink, which is trying to restore function to paraplegics and quadriplegics with the use of neural implants that can be used to control artificial limbs and allow um, stroke victims who can't speak to be able to, to communicate with their minds.
Mhm.
And but in terms of the how the what the function of the implant is within this alien agenda is something that we need to consider.
Right. I agree with you. There's a lot of people and a lot of people in your profession, in the medical profession and legal profession that have been abducted. They don't want to talk about it. And I know a lot of people I get on my show, I try to get them on for the first time and talk about their experiences. They're a little bit nervous about it. They're afraid what their families might think and other people might think. But you're coming out and talking about this. And I think this disclosure thing needs more people like you, like professionals, that know about the medical field and know about this type of thing, that neurological stuff. Were you ever hypnotized or regressed, Dr. Bruce?
No, so everything reported in my books has been consciously recalled, and I have to note that abduction investigators claim they've done the research. They've interviewed thousands of abductees, and the claim is that a large percentage of them have never been hypnotized. I won't say the majority, but a very significant percentage, like me, can recall all of their experiences consciously without the need for regressive hypnosis. Now, having said that, you know, that doesn't mean that what I recall is just the tip of the iceberg. All likelihood, that's what it represents.
Mhm.
And that if I did submit to regressive hypnosis, I would be able to recover a lot more, uh, perhaps many more experiences that I haven't been able to recall, and certainly much more of the experiences I have been able to recall.
You have a
And
longing. You have a longing to know all those things. Your curiosity. I know your curiosity is high right now because you wrote a book.
at the moment,
Yeah.
at the moment, yes,
Yeah.
yes, while I was in the middle of writing the book, I was focusing on what I could try to remember every detail possible so that I can be as honest and forthright in reporting what happened to me. But now that the book is written, and I'm wondering where do I go from here? What more can I learn about my own experiences? So I have to answer yes, I'm certainly very curious about what else I can learn and
Mm.
what tools I might avail myself of to
Right.
do that.
You know, hypnosis never worked for me. I tried it one time and it backfired on the woman who did
Really?
it. Yeah. See, I felt I heard this humming sound really loud and I couldn't go out. I couldn't relax. And I found her, she went to sleep at the desk and she was a professional hypnotist. And I thought, okay, this is enough. I can't, but what I do is at about 3 o'clock in the morning, that's when I can regress in my deep sleep and in
Mhm.
lucid dreams like you. That's how I got most of my regression, but I've had some actually face-to-face encounters with some of this stuff. But I my regress dreams were just like how you got yours, very lucid dreams, and you can actually
Mhm.
communicate or try to communicate. They don't talk to you, but you're talking to them, and they're looking at you like you're stupid. You know, so they're telepathically telling you what to do. Did you feel that too, Dr. Bruce, that you were telepathically being told what to do?
A number of times. I can recall one incident that comes to mind. And along with these implants, all of the abductees who report having implants, at least in the head region, have had unexplained nosebleeds. I can remember having one the same age I was when I first recalled the implant, what it looked like, what its structure was, at least external structure. I had an episode of missing time.
Mhm.
I was in the middle of one of the hallways of our apartment, and I couldn't remember what I had done that day. I'm just a 6 year old. I don't know where my parents are, and I suddenly feel wet under each nostril, and I hear a voice inside my head. It's not my voice telling me, "Don't let them see the blood." And I immediately, as if under command, walk a few steps to the bathroom, and much to my horror, I didn't even know I was bleeding. So I had to have a voice tell me I was bleeding, and then I see that from both nostrils there's a stream of blood that had already reached my chin. I immediately wash it off. That's one example of what I call a telepathic one-way communication, not a two-way communication.
Mhm.
There's another example I have of a two-way communication where I felt my internal dialogue was being eavesdropped on. It was being eavesdropped on. It was the incident where I woke up on the exam table and I saw the dozens of small humanoids, and for some reason I'm looking at them and they looked. I didn't know what a clone was, but they looked identical. They looked like carbon copies of one another. I
Yes.
thought to myself, are are they just boys? Are there boys and girls? I was a child at the time, and instantly I was made to understand. I don't know how I was made to understand this. That yes, they're both male and female beings that you're now looking at.
Mhm.
And I had another uh, encounter where I woke up paralyzed and was just anxious and nervous because I couldn't move. Not that I felt there was a presence or being in the room, my bedroom, but then I heard this voice in my head that I knew was not my voice that told me go to sleep, and I complied with that. So
Mhm.
these are examples of what I call one-way and two-way telepathic communication with what I believe is a non-human intelligence.
Right. A lot of people, like just like myself, I experience being very tired, and being told to kind of rest or take it easy, and I go and lay down, and then that's when the big abduction happened to me one time. I've had several, but this was electrification. I was really electrified. I was, a lot of static electricity is hitting me and paralyzing me. It wasn't sleep paralysis because I know what sleep paralysis is. I've had that a couple of times when I was younger, and you know the same feeling, doctor, that sleep paralysis and an abduction experience are totally different. Could you explain that?
Yes, well, what's not really addressed the uh, in the claims of the debunkers, psychologists who claim that a lot of the alien abductions can be explained by sleep paralysis, is the fact that sleep paralysis is very common. 20-30% of people have sleep paralysis um, on occasion, but that unless there's some medical or psychological cause, like post-traumatic stress disorder, that the abductees who have these recurrent episodes of sleep paralysis throughout their life, um, are likely to have to be able to attribute them to a medical or psychological cause when there is none, when one cannot be identified. So many abductees, have had these episodes of sleep paralysis during which they have the lucid dream, where they experience the encounter, and the abduction that follows it. And in many of these individuals, again, the medical or psychological cause has never been identified that would account for why they have not just an isolated incident of sleep paralysis, but recurrent sleep paralysis. So that's why I think it's a misnomer and or a red herring to attribute the alien abduction per se to that particular type of um, of, of sleep disorder,
Mhm.
where there
Now,
is no cause of it.
getting back into your book, Dominion Lost, the Dominion Lost title, what is the definition of that to you, Dr. Bruce?
Well, in writing the book, I was considering how the frequency and the number of sightings of UFOs throughout the world has been just dramatically been
Hmm.
increasing over the past
Yes, it has.
2 or 3 decades. The UFOs that clearly are not cannot be attributed to any man-made technology are um, dominating the skies. The UFOs can travel wherever they want at will, are totally unchallenged by human aircraft or spacecraft. They can invade the airspace over our military installations, and with impunity. And uh, when the aircraft are then sent up to try to engage them, they're completely unable to do so. UFOs are seen uh, traveling from the atmosphere into the ocean, and from the ocean back up into the skies. And the alien beings that are operating these UFOs land, come down into the homes of thousands, maybe millions of people, um, invade their homes and abduct the people, kidnap and abduct the people, and take them to the landed UFO or UFOs wherever they're they are at the time. Again, with complete freedom to do this, there's nothing that human beings can do to can challenge these ETs or aliens on the land, the air, or or in the oceans, where
Right.
we
Mhm.
think that the aliens have many uh, undersea bases. So as a result, we can no longer claim to have unchallenged dominion over the Earth. At
Mhm.
best, we have a shared dominion of our own planet,
I
and
see.
that's why it's entitled the book Dominion Lost.
That's a good title, especially for disclosure and with the Navy and everybody seeing these craft. Uh, now taking yourself through time in your book, what are some of the later stories in later life, Dr. Bruce, that you've had experiences in outside of like 3, 6 years old or a teenager, or as you were an adult, were you abducted or did you have contact with these ETs in the latter years?
It's the experiences were not as well defined. In my adult years, I can recall lucid dreams where I'm flying, and I imagine I'm being carried up somehow to a UFO that's somehow you know over hovering over my house, but although I can't see it, what I can see are the alien beings on either side of me. A number of dreams like that. But after that, I don't have uh, any other experiences that I can confidently attribute to the alien abduction phenomena.
Mhm.
So this happened mostly in my younger years. I didn't, and certainly within a few years of the last experiences I had as a uh, as a young adult, maybe my mid 20s. I contemplate about sharing those, but again, it was very close to the start of my biomedical research career, and I was kind of reluctant to do that. It's only, now there where I'm kind of more established at the end of my career that I felt comfortable in describing what happened to me decades earlier.
Okay, what about family members, wife, your kids, or other, family members? Have they witnessed anything? Has, in your household, have you witnessed any paranormal things? Anything that's moved around, or any signs that they're saying, "Hey, we're still with you, Dr. Bruce"?
A number of investigators and have mentioned this connection between having seen a UFO, had a close encounter, experienced an abduction, and then subsequent to that, having these paranormal experiences that are very difficult to connect to ETs and alien abduction.
Yes.
And the only thing I can point to is the fact that I became very interested after an early teenage an abduction, very interested in extrasensory perception, and began to study this. And he was even allowed by one of my teachers to present lectures in the class when I was 13 or 14 years old, and began to think that human beings were capable of developing these abilities. I have, in my later years, been able to experiment with friends, close friends, and family, and felt that I was making some progress in being able to develop this capacity to communicate telepathically with other human beings.
Right.
I've had other instances where I can't explain where, I thought I'd left something somewhere. You heard this before on the table. It's gone. I must have put it someplace. I'll come back and it's in the same place.
Mhm.
Or things falling off the shelf, and you examine why. There was no earthquake. There was
Right.
nothing that happened in the surrounding environment that caused the bottle or whatever object had fallen off the shelf. This had happened to me a number of times, which was gave me a very, very funny feeling. Um, but that, I think that's the extent of my interaction with the paranormal that happened after my abduction experiences that I really couldn't explain
Right.
how it could be connected to those earlier experiences.
Right.
Um,
They say that after an abduction experience, ET experience, that you do have paranormal activity in your house and around you. I just tell you a real quick story. It happened to me the other day, Dr. Bruce. I have a large plastic sack, and I had some items in it. It was closed. I have a trail camera that I put on my table on the side of me here, and my wife asked me just yesterday. She said, "Where's your trail camera?" She said, "I haven't seen it." Because she doesn't like it on when she's moving around in the house, And I said, "Yeah,
mhm,
okay,
mhm.
I admit that I'll turn it off. I only turn it on certain nights or whatever." But the trail camera was found inside this bag with two of the batteries out of it, and it was down at the bottom of the bag, and there's no way it could have fell into that bag underneath this table. And my wife said she didn't touch it, and I didn't touch it. So they let you know little paranormal things like that. They say they don't like the camera. They wanted to bury it in the sack. They, get rid of the camera. That's what they're telling me. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Also, Dr. Bruce, have you ever had any touches on your legs or your arms or your back at night? Like a hand or something, a feeling?
Thank you for reminding me. It's not in the book because
Yeah.
it was something I couldn't confidently, persuasively connect to the UFO alien abduction phenomenon. The same type of touch that you would swear actually happened, that an individual had taken the tips of their fingers and tapped them against my forehead to let me know they're there,
Yeah.
to wake me up. It felt very real, but that's the only type of touch I can recall experiencing. It always felt like a hand or a few fingers of a hand tapping me, in the middle of my forehead while I was asleep in bed.
Right. I
Very
think that
strange.
let me see your professional opinion about this. I think a lot of times, like I've been touched, my wife has actually been touched. back on her back on the shoulder, and she'd wake up. She said, "Did you just touch me?" And I was sound asleep. I said, "No, I didn't touch you." So I don't know if it's spiritual or if it's ET, like
Mm,
you're saying.
right.
We don't know
We
what
don't
this is
know.
all about. But I've had them yank on my foot, and I think the reason why they're doing that, like they touch you on the forehead, they wake you up to make sure you're okay because they don't want to
Hmm.
hurt you. Is
That's what I thought.
that
Yeah.
what you thinking,
Yeah.
Dr. Bruce?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. They're bringing you back and they're waking you up.
I can recall my mother telling me one time that she woke up and she felt hands behind her. And again, specifically for the tactile feel of fingers touching the back of her head that she described as being not human. She described them as being um, leathery and clammy,
Oh,
specifically.
yeah.
So, but I can't really recall that my mother had any quote unquote classical alien abduction experiences other than that.
Mm.
But yeah, that's stuff you think may be related, you just don't know how.
Right. There's a lot of spiritual and paranormal things. I guess if you believe in angels, you got to believe in spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You got to believe in maybe ghost. I don't like the terminology ghost. It's a spirit or spiritual bodies coming back and visiting. But is there anything you'd like to add about your book, Dr. Bruce? We're up to about an hour now. So is there anything else you want to add about your book and tell us
Well,
why?
what I want to emphasize is because you brought it up at the very beginning, that I did write two books for a reason, and I wrote the unabridged version, which is about 200 pages, which contains almost exclusively my personal UFO encounter alien abduction experiences. I'm a scientist, of course. I'm going to be, going to have the tendency and desire to do analysis, but that's kind of bereft of any analysis, or almost has almost no analysis, so that the reader could experience, um, you know, my what I experienced.
Mhm.
But for those who are interested in how I, as a scientist, would explain what happened to me, I wrote the second book, which contains all of my abduction experiences, but with several chapters that talk about, what the implants are made of, what's the purpose of the implants, how would they function, how are they similar to the implants that are being used today by human scientists, and how the uh, propulsion drive of the alien uh, UFOs might work, and for people that don't have a scientific background, many of them still would be interested in reading that longer unabridged version if they so desire, and they can. These books are only several dollars, uh, listed on Amazon. Can buy the unabridged version if they're more curious about that. And of course, for those with a scientific background, I would of course encourage them to buy the unabridged version, because I think the way I describe and analyze um, the how the implants will work, and how and the scientific discussions are done clearly enough so that you don't have to have uh, formal background in the field that I'm drawing upon to discuss how the UFOs work, or how the aliens were genetically engineered, or the grays were genetically engineered, or how the implants work. It's so I think that I have a book that uh, the average person can read, and another book that people with technical or scientific background might be more likely to enjoy.
Mhm. That sounds like a good that sounds like a good pairing. I know that a lot of times you're being told, like you say, they're controlling our minds and everything. The ETs can do that. And I think you wrote this book or these two books because they wanted you to get the message out. It's just like me. It took me forever to get my book out. I was only 2 years or so ago that I did that. And I'm an old codger right now. Yeah, so I'm retired, but I knew I had to get it out. Something just compelled me to do this. And you say here's a statement here that you said the new reality must be addressed immediately. And I think that's your purpose for this, right, Dr. Bruce?
Yes, because we don't know what the alien agenda is, whether it poses a clear and imminent danger, or whether it's, they're here for primarily for our benefit. We just don't know.
Mhm.
So I think we need to have as many high-level scientists working together in an interdisciplinary program, hopefully here in the U.S., to study every aspect of this phenomenon, learn as much as we can, as fast as we can, because they've been here for a long time,
Yes.
and we don't know what their plans are for tomorrow.
Okay. Dr. Bruce, could you tell us exactly where we can find you on the internet, and also where we can find your books?
Oh, please visit my Facebook page.
Right.
And also, you can find books on Amazon. And I encourage anyone who has any questions or comments or wants to correspond with me in any way to send me an email at Dominion Lost. That's the title of the book, dominionlost@gmail.com.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram. So, I'd love to hear from people for comments and questions. Maybe they've had similar experiences. Maybe uh, they have some insights into what happened to me that I don't have. But I encourage people to respond in any way to the books in my story.
Okay.
Um,
I'll have that information in the narrative on the video when I release
great,
it. So I'll have
thank you.
your Facebook and the Amazon and your Instagram, that type of thing. I'll put that on there so they can get a hold of you, and the email address, of course, so they can write you and ask you questions. And since you're a doctor, uh, you might be able to give them better answers about abductions and the physicality of all of it. That's something else that people might be looking for. Dr. Bruce Rapuano,
Rapuano.
Rapuano. Okay, I'm getting it. I'm getting it. Well, I thank you very much for coming on, and hope to
Was
see you in the near future. We can come back and talk about more. And I'm sure you're going to probably run into some people that that you might be able to go back and forth with and talk. So
mhm.
you might have more to tell us.
It was a great meeting you and a pleasure talking to you, Dave.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm so happy that you got your story out. And you're a professional and all. I mean, a doctor, a scientist, a lawyer, a lot of work. You put a lot of work into that, and what you're saying in what happened to you is very believable, because why would a professional like you come forward
Mhm.
and tell the truth? I mean, it adds more credibility. It's not just because we're pilots or we're cops or we're military, or to be believed more. The individual person should also have that respect to be believed. But also with
Yes,
your case, with your case, so it adds another more depth to what the medical and the physicality part about this whole abduction thing is about. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for being on the
I
show, and
appreciate it.
I'll get this out and I'll give you a copy of it. And I want to thank everybody for being with us. Dave Emmons and the Strange Reality, and I'll be back. I'm usually back twice a week, and I hope you watch the show. And very interesting to have a doctor, scientist, and a lawyer all combined together, talking about this phenomena. And I appreciate it. Dr. Bruce, thank you so much. Good night, everybody.